Late last year, Tesla decided to release the full self driving beta to any person who has either purchased FSD beta in the past or has subscribed to it for about $200 a month. Was this a mistake? Did they roll it out too wide, too fast? Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. This is the first part of a two-part series, so stay tuned for the second part, which will be why Tesla's full self-driving beta is so radically different from pretty much anything else that's out there. But today I want to focus on whether Tesla made a strategic mistake by releasing full self-driving beta to anybody who had paid for it, no matter what their driving score, driving record, etc. is, late last year. Was this, as I said, too much, too fast? And by the way, I want to give Mars Embassy a shout out for the original thought about this. Now, I'm not throwing him under the bus at all. I'm going to present arguments both for and against this. So I do have my humble opinion towards the end about what I think is the correct way that Tesla should have done this. You know, the cat's out of the bag at this point, or the horses have left the barn, whatever metaphor you want to use. So it's a little bit late to do this right now, but I do have a suggestion about perhaps what they should have done instead. But I'm saving that for the end. Anyway, this entire video is mine, but the original idea of going too wide, too fast was from Mars Embassy, and you should definitely check out his channel on YouTube and follow him on Twitter as well. Really interesting guy and super, super nice. So let's start with the advantages of releasing full self-driving beta to the massive public. So originally there were just a few hundred FSD beta testers, then it went to a couple of thousand, then it went to 10 or 20,000, and I can't even remember the exact numbers anymore and when it happened. I know that I got mine in October of 2021, so I've had it for somewhere around 18 months at this point, a year and a half-ish. But anyway, at that point, I think there was on the order of 10,000 beta testers, something like that, and you had to have a 99 or 100%, full self-driving or, driving score on your Tesla prior to being allowed to get the beta. That was after the OG testers, of course, got that. That's the original group of testers. Anyway, so it has since expanded to about 364,000 people. And that is everybody who has either paid for full self-driving beta, which could have been anywhere from $7,000 if you bought it a long time ago, up to about $15,000 if you bought it recently, or pay the $200. I think it's $199 a month still, but anyway, approximately $200 a month to have full self-driving beta. So it's been rolled out to everybody. The big catch was that originally, as I said, I had to drive like a scared person. I don't know. I was going to say something derogatory, but I'm like, I basically just had to drive incredibly, incredibly carefully and slowly for a little bit over a month to get like that 99% score so that I was eligible to get full self-driving beta. And basically that just indicates that you are capable of driving in a very, very careful way. So that was originally, I don't know how they picked the original group of people. I think that they looked at them and said, they've been driving for a while. They have the correct kind of cars. They live in the correct places that we're interested in, and they have really good driving records, and so they picked them out manually. The next batch that I was part of, actually I was part of the third, because originally it was 100% scores and I had like a 99%. Anyway, but it rolled out to people, but you had to have achieved, because it's like Mario Kart, you've had to have, like achieved and unlocked these certain levels of things. The opposite of Mario Kart, driving incredibly carefully and slowly and staying far away from everybody and not accelerating very quickly and all of that good stuff. But anyway, so there was a lot of control over who had the beta, and it was just on the order of 10,000, users, not that many. So increasing to 363, let's just call it 365,000, just to be round numbers or something, that gives Tesla access to a massive amount more data. So that's the number one advantage, is that Tesla is getting this huge, huge treasure trove of data, and they're getting data from people who are not necessarily the most careful drivers in the world. And that also could be useful, although there's an argument to be made against that, because you could also say that the vehicles are getting training data from people who are not giving it correct human input. You want it to be learning from the best of human drivers, not necessarily what humans are making mistakes on. But I think Tesla has worked out their entire data pipeline so that they're pretty good at, polishing the data and making sure that it's all good before it goes into the vehicles. But anyway, they have this huge treasure trove trove of data now that they can get. It's an order of magnitude at least larger than what they had before. So every day they're collecting 10 or 15 times more data than they were before. That gives them access to a lot more crazy corner cases. And again, you could say if they're average drivers, they might get themselves into weird situations or something. So there's more, bizarre situations that these Teslas could get into. And just the fact that they're driving 10 or 15 times more per day is going to give them access to a lot more data. So that gives them more data to train on, which is a very, very good thing. The second part of more data, of course, is eventually when Tesla wants to show this to NHTSA or other regulatory bodies in other countries, they can say, here is data from 365,000 people approximately or more by the time they actually do this. And they can say, we have driven this many tens of millions of miles on full self-driving beta with only these particular interventions or only these few accidents or things like that. So they can give them a much, much larger base of data from which to show statistics. And that is a really big thing if you're seeking regulatory approval. So that also is a very good thing. So data, both just getting more, but also being able to show more data for regulatory approval are both huge advantages to releasing it to the wider public. And then the other advantage is, and this is kind of a little bit more of a subtle thing and certainly very speculative on my part, but that Tesla may have either felt or been to some extent forced into releasing this because of the fact that they had sort of promised it, right? So let's say I had spent $10,000 on full self-driving beta, which we did. We spent $10,000 at the time. That's what it cost. And, after 2 or 3 years or something, by the time that I'm thinking about potentially even selling my vehicle, that I haven't had a chance to use the beta after I purchased that beta, that could lead to, reputational harm, but also even potentially legal challenges. People could say, look, I paid for this, I want a refund, or I want a chance to use it. So there may have been some of that going on. Again, no inside information with Tesla and what's going on with them, but I'm speculating that there could have been some pressure from some fairly powerful groups or a large group of people saying, yo, I paid for this, why can't I use it? It's a beta, you should allow me to use it. And so Tesla might have felt some pressure to be able to release that to everybody. So that could have been a significant, I'm calling this an advantage, but it's basically they didn't want to get in trouble, so they needed to release it to everybody. Plus the fact it just looks good to be able to say, look, doesn't matter what people's driving records are, we are releasing this to everybody. So there is a bit of a public relations kind of coup to being able to make this all very public and to allow anybody who's paid for the beta to be allowed to use it. That is in stark contrast to any other full self-driving, autonomous driving sort of package, which I'm going to talk about in my video tomorrow. And with that in mind, let's turn to the disadvantages. The number one disadvantage is you're getting a lot more poor drivers. So just like I said with the advantages, you have, the advantage of getting more data from people who are not as, expert of a driver or can't drive as well. You're getting a lot of more poor drivers. Poor drivers have a tendency not to pay attention to what's going on around them as much. I've just noticed this driving in cars with people. They tend to make poor decisions when they need to, do something themselves. And I would assume that would then carry over to poor decisions if and when to intervene with full self-driving when it needs it, because it still does need it from time to time. It is a beta. And as Tesla says, it's level 2 autonomy. It needs driver intervention from time to time. And then the other piece of this is that poorer drivers, not all of them, but many poor drivers are also higher risk takers. So it's the kind of person who might, do that stupid thing where they try to sit in the back seat and have full self-driving drive without them and stuff. Now with the interior cabin camera working as well as it is, I don't think that that's a realistic possibility anymore. I'm certainly not going to test it myself, but I'm just saying that risky behavior should be reduced to some extent. But, again, this is the kind of thing where if you have a person who has a more poor driving record, I'm talking about, their driving score would be lower if Tesla was doing their insurance or showing them that. And also that they may have had accidents and they may have had a number of run-ins with things like tickets for going outrageously fast or doing stupid things or getting in accidents. So that kind of driver, the more risk-taking kind of driver, puts the full self-driving at risk because, of course, if the person says that it was engaged, even if they were doing something really stupid, like they had it, going 80 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour neighborhood, which you can do, it's not a good idea, but you could do that. You can crank it all the way up to that and drive it around and then, do something where you put on a blindfold or something like that, right? Eventually, the FSD system is going to catch you and say, no, you can't do this kind of stuff. But there would be a period of time where the person could argue, I had it engaged and it ran off the road and ran into a tree or something, and that was the full self-driving's fault. So this puts Tesla at risk. If you have somebody who's not as good of a driver, they, on the sort of more neutral end of things, just might not intervene when they need to because they're not really paying attention or they're not good at making decisions driving anyway. But then to the extreme level, it could be somebody who's intentionally setting the system up to fail. And then when it does, this creates a lot of bad publicity. So again, like I was saying, there's kind of the balance of everything. We've got the nice PR coup when Tesla's like, anybody who wants it can get it. Buy the car, buy full self-driving, you can access it and you can drive around with that. That is a really cool PR move. The downside of that is, if something bad happens, and so far, Tesla is always called out when bad things happen, but thus far, knock on wood, I have not seen any evidence that these poorer drivers have created situations where there have been significantly bad accidents. I don't know about fender benders. I don't know about things like that, but it certainly seems like, at least from my experience, and if you have different experience, if you know about incidents where full self-driving was definitely involved and something happened, because a lot of times people say full self-driving is involved, but then when it comes down to it, it actually wasn't. But anyway, if you have evidence of that, definitely let me know in the comments. I would be very curious to look at what's going on with that, and I'll do a follow-up video about that if that is the case. But anyway, overall, a broader group of drivers, and especially ones who are rather poor at driving, leads to a lot more potential for this beta software to make a mistake in the context where a human being doesn't take over appropriately, and then you have a big PR nightmare. And beyond that, you could have, again, NHTSA, NHTSA could be getting involved. So I guess you could consider that a separate thing. So you've got the PR aspect of it. You've also got the regulatory bodies aspect of it. And that does seem to have happened. Of course, NHTSA has created this thing where Tesla's had to do a recall, which is just an over-the-air update to deal with things like yellow lights, lane changing, coming to an even more complete stop at stop signs where nobody else is around, things like that. So they have become much more actively involved than they used to be, the US regulatory body, and I believe Canada as well. So you're looking at a situation where you've got the government, eyeballing you a whole lot more now that there's 365,000 people using this product, rather than originally a couple hundred, then 1,000, then 10,000, etc. So having NHTSA, having NHTSA involved in this is definitely, it's a bummer for those of us who want to see these things rolling out relatively quickly. Of course, eventually Tesla is going to have to deal with regulatory bodies like this to get this approved. But, and this brings up my last huge disadvantage, this really seems to be slowing things down. We have seen almost a full brakes on the whole thing since the original group of people was expanded out and then expanded out and then expanded out to the full group. We've seen an incredibly slow rollout. It used to be every couple of weeks, every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, there would be a new update to the software. And now this stuff comes out very, very infrequently. And that actually is contrary to Tesla's program of being able to, iterate this software fast and figure out what's going on and train it and make it work better. So in opposition to the big data and being able to do things to look at a wider variety of driving, get 10 or 15 times more miles in every day than they used to. The counter argument to that is, with all this regulatory oversight, they're being forced to go incredibly slowly as they update this software. And I do understand that there's a potential irony here because, of course, we're all waiting for version 11.3.2, I think, to come out, something like that. But anyway, supposedly it's rolling out this weekend. I'm recording this Saturday night and it will release Sunday morning. And so So, it seems like the odds are almost, perfect that there will be a release of this software prior to when this comes out. But it doesn't really countermand my point, which is even when Full Self-Driving 11.3.2 comes out, it has been months and months and months. The original Full Self-Driving 11 was on 11/11/22. So that was way last year, right? That was months and months and months ago. So we still haven't got version 11, except for the original beta testers haven't got version 11 yet. And that, to my mind, means that they're having to iterate incredibly slowly because of the number of people who are involved in the beta testing program right now and the very much higher risks that Tesla is involved in making this public. And that, in my mind at least, is a relatively significant disadvantage. All right, so I'm going to finish off with, hypothetically, if I was techno king of Tesla, which obviously I'm not, and I would do a very, very bad job of it. So I'm just throwing this out there, please understand and take it with a grain of salt. But what I would have done, instead of just going like everybody gets it, is I would have said every release, we're going to drop the driving score by 5%. So I believe before it went to the wide public, it was somewhere around 95%. Let's just call it that. It doesn't really matter. But so version X comes out and you have to have a 95% score, and then version X.1 comes out and you have to have a 90% score, and then version X.2 comes out and it's an 85% score. And so they could have kept iterating downward per version of the software that came out. And what that would have done is it would have incrementally increased the drivers. So you would have gotten more data. You would have gotten the more average driver. You could have said to people like, hey, I know you paid for it. If you want it, just get your driving score up to this. And when the next version comes out, then you can access it. So, there would have been a pretty good communication with the public and a pretty reasonable way of rolling this out. So I'm not in charge of Tesla. I don't have access to the internal stuff and I don't know what was going on. So it may have not been a reasonable option, but that certainly seems like it would have been the most reasonable option to me, at least. So that's what I at least would have done if I was in charge. And one final note as a little counterpoint to all of this stuff is that if you take away full self-driving from us now, it will make us more dangerous drivers. I know I've talked to a lot of people. I know this is anecdotal. I don't have the statistics about this. I suppose it could be done if NHTSA decides that they're going to be like, no more full self-driving for people. But basically, my feeling is when I don't have access to it, when I drive another vehicle, I had to drive my friend's Jeep when I was skiing. I had to. It was very, very kind of him to loan me the Jeep. But it was interesting driving a different vehicle, without full self-driving, without adaptive cruise control, all of that kind of stuff. The first couple of days that I drove it, I was like, I could definitely tell the fact that I have become much more dependent on full self-driving. So now that it's out, now that people are using it, now that people are used to it, it would be a horrible idea to take it away. So if anybody from the government or regulatory bodies just happens to be watching this, I would argue strongly against taking it away. Even if it's only a level 2 or 2.5 version of software ADAS system, it's still the most useful ADAS system that's on the market right now. So it would be a gigantic mistake to take it away from people. So I do want to add that in there. I also want to add in just really quickly that huge thanks and kudos to the team that's working on this. I am not making any arguments against them and what they're doing. The mission is fantastic and it's definitely progressing. I mean, I've seen the videos, I've driven it myself. It's really an amazing piece of software and technology. So I don't want anybody to think I'm ungrateful. I just, I'm just concerned. I wanted to see this iterate more quickly and get to the state where it is actually approved and we can have it considered to be a level 3 autonomous driving rather than level 2. So that's all I'm talking about. I really do appreciate everybody at Tesla. Thank you all so much for your hard work. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. Maybe you're mad at me for saying things like this. If you are, let me know in the comments, but just again, constructively is fine. And of course, please like this video if you do enjoy it so other people can find it, and consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much for your support. I truly do appreciate it. It's really amazing. It's a super positive environment. If you want to join the team, check out the stuff that's going on Discord, etc. Just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts. the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.